Hello everybody. Imagine a magnificent maritime kingdom stretching along the central coast of what is now Vietnam, more than 1,000 years ago. Ships from India, Arabia, and the archipelagos of Southeast Asia docked at its bustling ports. Towering red brick spires adorned with intricate carvings paid homage to Hindu gods. This was Champa, a kingdom now nearly forgotten, yet its echoes still resonate through the pages of Southeast Asian history. From the ruins of its former glory arises an unusual tale. It is the story of a people who lost their homeland but never their soul. They are the Cham, and among them exists a particularly enigmatic group, the BANI CHAM, Muslims who do not pray 5 times a day, do not fast during Ramadan, yet feel deeply and profoundly religious. When Champa fell in the 15th century under relentless assaults from the expanding Vietnamese Empire, the Cham fled southward. Some settled in Cambodia, while others scattered into secluded coastal villages. There, in isolation and under the weight of history, their identity began to shift. They gradually left behind the Hindu pantheon and embraced Islam, but not the Islam of Arabia. This Islam arrived slowly, along trade winds and seafaring routes, carried by Malay and Indian merchants. It was a gentle Islam, welcoming, interpretive, and deeply respectful of local customs. Instead of rigid doctrine, their faith became like a family heirloom garden, tended with care, love, and deeply personal devotion. As kingdoms turned into villages and mosques were still unheard of, the Cham created their own sacred spaces. Not grand mosques with towering minarets and loudspeakers, but humble thatched roof houses called Thang Magik. There, village elders would recite sacred verses, not for the 5 daily prayers, but during ancestral rites and spiritual purification rituals. They did not have imams in the conventional sense. Their spiritual leader was the Poakar, a respected figure who memorized short Quranic chapters, but also preserved ancient stories, herbal knowledge, and the legacy of the old gods. This unique blend of religion and culture became the lifeblood of the BANI CHAM belief system. And herein lies their distinctiveness. They still call themselves Muslim, but they live within a rhythm of faith that most of us would not recognize. There are no 5 daily calls to prayer. No pre-dawn meals, no breaking of fast at sunset. But there are prayers. There is belief. And most of all, there is pride in who they are. On a quiet morning in a remote village in southern Vietnam, the crowing of roosters echoes in the air. There is no call to prayer. No one rushes to perform ablution. But in one simple stilt house, an elderly man in a white robe sits cross-legged, facing east. His hands caress an old wooden prayer bead, his lips trembling in prayer. This is how the BANI CHAM worship, in silence, in tradition, and in a faith that only those who truly understand can comprehend. For most Muslims, the 5 daily prayers are the pillars of their faith. But not for the BANI CHAM. They do not perform Fajr, Dia, Ars, Maghrib, or Isha prayers. Not because they reject their faith, but because they believe that faith doesn't always need to be expressed in the same way. For the BANI CHAM, religion is not just a set of commandments, it is a living heritage. Their worship is performed once a year, during special ceremonies that are often closed to outsiders. One such ceremony is Ramuan, their version of Ramadan. But don't imagine they fast from dawn to dusk. No. Instead, they gather in their places of worship, recite prayers, remember their ancestors, and cleanse themselves spiritually. Their religious leaders, called Poakar, inherit ancient texts written in both Arabic and Old Cham. They don't recite the Quran like modern Charis, instead, they chant fragments of verses passed down through generations, sometimes without even understanding the literal meaning. But for them, this chanting is a bridge to a deeper world, the spiritual realm, the realm of their ancestors, and the Creator. This form of belief is known among researchers as BANI Islam. Often misunderstood as deviant or incorrect Islam, BANI Islam is, in fact, a reflection of how flexible religion can be when it encounters local culture and a long history of oppression. Imagine living as a minority, drifting in a land that was once yours to rule. No mosques. No access to formal religious education. But still, you want to hold on to the faith passed down by your fathers and grandfathers. From these limitations, the BANI CHAM crafted their own version of Islam. A simple Islam. A grounded Islam. An Islam that feels more like a grandmother's memory than a preacher's sermon. The BANI CHAM may not know bowing or prostration. They may never endure thirst on a hot afternoon during Ramadan. But they believe in the one God. They mention Allah's name in their prayers. They love the Prophet Muhammad, even if they don't know every detail of his life. They live by principles of honesty, respect for elders, and solidarity within their community. And for them, that is enough. Morning in a BANI CHAM village begins calmly. Although there is no call to prayer echoing through the air, their spiritual life continues to flow like a slowly turning wheel. There is rhythm, there is peace. However, with the rise of technology and the increasing access to information, a storm begins to brew. Outside the village, in a world far from their own, the internet is changing everything. The younger generation of BANI CHAM, who once only knew their religion through stories passed down by their elders, now begin to seek more. They open their smartphones, watch videos of religious sermons, and study the Quran through apps. They see images of grand mosques, people praying in congregation, and fellow Muslims around the world proudly observing Ramadan. And as the outside world begins to learn about them, the BANI CHAM community starts to ask themselves, is this the right way? Have they been practicing their faith correctly according to the true teachings of Islam? The BANI CHAM now face an unavoidable dilemma: to maintain the traditions that have taken root in their culture or adapt to the rapidly changing world. Some of the younger generation feel compelled to revive the practice of the 5 daily prayers and fasting during Ramadan. They believe they, too, can be part of the global Muslim community, fulfilling religious duties in a more organized way. Some of the younger members start delving into the interpretation of the Quran, attending study groups, and even attempt to build small mosques in their villages. They feel that the Islam they have followed for so long needs to be renewed, in line with the Sharia taught by Prophet Muhammad, though they are unwilling to completely abandon the cultural heritage that has shaped their lives for centuries. But this change is not without resistance. Some of the elder figures, who remain loyal to the BANI CHAM traditions, feel anxious. They worry that if the younger generation follows mainstream Islam, they will lose the essence of the faith that has bound their community for hundreds of years. "Our Islam is our heritage, not something that should be traded away," said one elder with a wise tone. The debate between the older and younger generations reflects a deeper question that looms over the BANI CHAM: who are we, and where do we belong in the global Muslim community? The BANI CHAM, with their unique approach to faith, often feel marginalized. They don't feel fully acknowledged by the larger Muslim world. They are often seen as practicing an incomplete form of Islam because they do not perform prayers and fasting like the majority of Muslims. On the other hand, they also feel deeply connected to their own culture, a culture that has been ingrained for centuries and provides them with strength in navigating their challenging lives. In the midst of this tension, one thing remains unchanged: the strong sense of brotherhood within the BANI CHAM community. For them, religion is not just about rituals, but about human relationships, both with God and with one another. Outside their village, global trends continue to evolve. Society is becoming more connected through social media. Many of the BANI CHAM begin to present themselves as part of the broader Muslim world in more visible ways, wearing neater hijabs, adopting clothing that aligns more closely with religious teachings, or fasting during Ramadan. But can these changes be embraced by the BANI CHAM community, so deeply rooted in tradition? Some argue that globalization and technological progress offer opportunities to share their beliefs with the outside world. Others feel threatened by the rapid tide of modernity. For them, tradition is not merely a habit, it is an identity that cannot be easily replaced by something more global. The biggest challenge for the BANI CHAM is finding the balance between preserving their centuries-old traditions and adapting to the demands of a more globalized world. As the world moves at such a rapid pace, it is inevitable for every ethnic group, including the CHAM people, to find their place amid the roar of modernity. Some choose to remain within the bounds of their traditions, holding tightly to the heritage that has been passed down for generations. However, others feel that the time has come to open up to the outside world and find ways to be more accepted in the broader global Islamic context. In some CHAM villages, daily life is still closely tied to customs that are centuries old. Although technology now reaches every corner of the village, many still choose to live simply, wearing traditional clothing, following ancestral rituals, and keeping the Thang Magic alive as their place of worship. For them, religion is not just a set of obligations to be fulfilled with rigid rules, but a deeper spiritual journey that connects them with their ancestors and their homeland. Most of the older generation believes that these traditions are a bridge that links them to their past, and through them, they find peace and stability in life. "Don't let the outside world change who we are," said an elder wisely. "We are Cham people, and the Islam we practice is part of who we truly are." However, they also recognize that change is a reality. Though difficult, they cannot close their eyes to what is happening beyond their community. Some religious leaders have begun to open up to discussions with the younger generation about how Cham Islam can remain relevant in a more globalized world. On the other hand, the younger generation of Cham people is beginning to feel a gap between how they practice their religion and how the majority of Muslims around the world practice it. They see their friends in Indonesia, Malaysia, or even the Middle East, who perform the 5 daily prayers, fast with devotion, and strictly follow religious teachings. "If they can do it, why can't we?" asked a young man with passion. Their search to understand Islam more deeply has led them to explore further, whether by attending religious studies, joining global Muslim communities, or even accessing religious resources online. Some Cham youths have started to change how they worship, incorporating the 5 daily prayers into their routines, and some have even begun fasting during Ramadan. However, these changes do not come without challenges. The Cham people face a major dilemma: do we need to change ourselves just to be accepted? Some feel that, although they want to adapt, they do not want to lose their essence as Cham people, those who practice Islam in the way their ancestors have taught them. However, there are also a few young people who believe that diversity in religious practice is, in fact, a strength. Islam is vast. God does not want his followers to be trapped in one form, said one young leader with conviction. They believe that even though their way of worshipping may differ, their hearts are still focused on the same goal: drawing closer to God and living well with others. This view has become more open as dialogue between Muslims worldwide has increased, especially in the online world. The young Cham people no longer feel isolated, as they can now communicate with Muslims from all over the world. "We are Muslims, and we have the right to practice this religion in our own way," he added. The Cham people, though different in rituals and worship, feel that they are still part of this larger community. They see that Islam does not exist in just one form or one way. Islam is a flexible teaching that can be embraced in various cultures and traditions, as long as the core principles of faith and good deeds are upheld. In the midst of the diversity within the Islamic world, the Cham people are now striving to find a balance. They do not want to sacrifice the values of the traditions that have been passed down for centuries, but they also want to be part of the broader Muslim community, one that supports and shares in unity. They wish to integrate into the modern world without losing the strong cultural roots they have. In this way, the Cham people show the world that diversity is not an obstacle; on the contrary, diversity is a strength that makes Islam even more beautiful. They continue to uphold their identity, while opening their hearts to changes that bring goodness. The Cham people may never truly be like other Muslims, but it is precisely in their differences that they find peace. After all, in the end, faith is not about how we worship, but how we live with love and respect for one another.